of this instruction course, that is the principles of strabismus surgery. So you have evaluated the strabismus, you have come to a diagnosis of what strabismus it is, and then you have decided that this patient requires surgery. So then what you do with the strabismus? So basically the aim of strabismus surgery is, one is the weakening of the muscle. The aim of strabismus surgery is to correct the misalignment and restore the binocular vision. So before that, you should have treated the amblyopia. The timer is to be changed. This is a 15-minute talk. And so in this, we are doing something called the weakening procedures. The strengthening procedures are modifying the plane of action of the muscle. So what are the indications of for strabismus surgery? One is for improving the cosmesis, relieving asthenopia, eliminating diplopia, restore the stereopsis, correction of abnormal head posture, as I said, with the Duane's retraction syndrome. Strabismus surgery is actually technically not difficult. I'm assuring you, all of you, if you are a good SICS or a phaco surgeon, you can definitely do a strabismus surgery. In fact, in Western countries, in Western countries, people are initiated into strabismus surgeries first before they are given cataract surgeries. But unfortunately, in our country, it's opposite. Most important, pre-operative planning is the most important part of strabismus surgery. Strabismus surgery itself is not so difficult. So a complete knowledge about the anatomy and physiology is absolutely essential. Which muscle to operate, how much to operate is more important than how we operate. Instrumentation is very simple. You just need an SICS set. Only additional probably will require a caliper and muzzle hooks. Anesthesia, most often in adult patients, we do a peribulbar anesthesia. In children, we do general anesthesia. Some people do topical anesthesia also, but whatever the type of anesthesia, you have to have an anesthetist by your side, because anytime you can have a ocular cardiac reflex and end up with a serious problem. Sutures, we use the 6-0 Vicryl. This is the most commonly used double arm 6-0 Vicryl with reverse cutting the suture. Sometimes you may have to use a non-absorbable suture as well. So needle placement is very important. We go at a depth of about 0.2 millimeters, about 1/3 of the depth of the sclera, and we take a 1.5 millimeter long bite. And this is very, very important, because taking the scleral bite, that is the most important part. So that's why I would request all of you to do strabismus surgeries only under a microscope with a good magnification. So here we can see the types of incision, the conjunctival incision. One is the fornix-based incision, as the other is the limbal-based incision. For beginners, I will always recommend using a limbal-based incision, because this gives a wider exposure and you can see the muscles nicely. Fornix-based incision may be more difficult. Coming to the choice of surgery, as I said, we are doing either a weakening procedure, strengthening procedure, or a transposition procedure. We are changing the direction of the action of the muscle. Coming to the weakening procedure, the most commonly done weakening procedure is the recession. The other procedures are less commonly done. And the strengthening procedure most commonly done is the resection or the plication. Sometimes you may have to do tucking, like in a superior oblique procedure. And vertical transposition, I think Dr. Kavita has nicely demonstrated the transposition procedures. Coming to the most commonly performed procedure is the recession procedure. So in recession, we are going to shift the position. Means this is the insertion. You cut the muscle from that place and shift it backwards. So effectively, you are weakening the action of that muscle. So this is the procedure of recession. So you can see I am doing a limbal incision. So it's very important to hook the muscle properly. Otherwise, you may hook the wrong muscle, particularly in a lateral rectus, you may hook the inferior oblique, and you may end up with serious problems. So I use a single arm suture at the two ends. Some people use a double arm suture with a central bite also. It's the surgeon's choice, but it's very, very important to secure the muscle nicely, because if you put a loose suture, then you may end up with a slip muscle or a lost muscle. So you have to carefully disinsert the muscle. So you can see now that was the incision, and now this is the amount of recession. So I'm measuring how much muscle I have to put it backwards. So this is the amount of weakening of the muscle I am doing based on the preoperative calculation. So this, I said, is the most important step. You should be very careful and do it slowly. Otherwise, you may end up perforating the floor. So once you take the bites in the sclera, you anchor the muscle onto the sclera. So that will be the new insertion. So the muscle has been shifted from this point to this point. So thereby you are correcting the TB. Coming to the next form of procedure is the resection. Resection is a strengthening procedure. So in resection, we are weakening you are shifting the insertion backwards, but in resection, you are cutting a part of the muscle and shortening the length of the muscle. So thereby you are strengthening the muscle. So this is a procedure for resection of the muscle. So the same thing, you hook the muscle and then see the amount of muscle you want to shorten based on your preoperative assessment. So you take 2 bites on either end of the muscle, and this is the amount of muscle that we are going to excise or shorten. So again, it's very important to get a secure suture here, because if you have a loose suture, you may end up losing the muscle or just slip the muscle close up. So just putting a small clamp to avoid the bleeding. Then you cut the muscle, and then this is the part of the muscle you are going to excise. You have shortened the muscle by this amount, and then you anchor it to the insertion. Next strengthening procedure is a plication. So here what we are doing in resection, we are cutting this muscle and discarding this part of the muscle. In plication, what we are doing is we are just taking a bite on here and folding the muscle over each other. You can see here, you just push this thing. You're taken a suture here, taken a suture at the limbus. Instead of cutting the muscle, you push the muscle backwards or forwards and then tighten the suture there, so that you don't have to disinsert the muscle. So the main advantage of this is you are not cutting the vessels, the blood supply to the eye. So risk of having any anterior segment ischemia will be very less, particularly when you are operating on multiple muscles. Plication is a very simple procedure to avoid anterior segment ischemia. And also it is a reversible procedure. Suppose in the first week you see there is an overcorrection, you just release the suture and then the muscle goes back to its original position. So here you can see that I'm taking once I've taken the bite on the muscle, then I'm taking the bite at the insertion of the muscle, and then you just tighten the suture. So you can see this muscle is folded there. So initially you have a small bump there, but over a period of time that will get resolved. And results are almost as good as the resection, but with the advantage of not interfering with the blood supply, and second thing, there is no risk of having any slip muscle or a lost muscle. Another improvement over the resection or resection is the adjustable suture. So this gives a second chance for a surgeon to revisit whether the alignment, whatever you have planned, is come out correctly or not. So particularly it is useful in a small angle strabismus when you are dealing with restrictive strabismus, the Devon's retraction syndrome, which I told, or if you are doing a research. So this is similar to the resection procedure only, but only thing is, instead of tying the knot fully, we put a bow tie and put a loose knot, so that you can revisit after the anesthesia effect goes off. So here you see I can take in the bite on the insertion instead of taking the bite at the intended point of resection. So suppose if I am doing a 7 mm resection, instead of going 7 mm from the limbus, I am taking the sutures bites at the limb insertion itself. So I'm just securing it with a double bite so that you don't have a slip muscle. So you measure the amount of precision, whether intended, whatever you want to do, and then put a knot and then put a bow tie. So you're not tying the knot here, you're just putting a bow tie, so that what you can do is you can release this bow tie and adjust the amount of precision after the anesthesia effect wears off. So fortunately in this patient, alignment was perfect. I don't need to adjust it. So I just release the suture and then tighten the knot here. So this gives a second chance for the surgeon to revisit whether the intended result has come or not. So particularly useful for beginners where we are not sure about the nomograms. Coming to the oblique procedure, the most commonly done is the inferior oblique procedures. So in inferior oblique procedure, basically the most commonly done procedure is the resection. So whereas you are shifting the insertion from here to actually it inserts just below the lat rectus muscle. and then you are putting it back near the insertion of the inferior rectus. So this is a recession of the inferior oblique. And you have something called the anterior position of the inferior oblique, particularly for elevation problems. Sorry, the severe inferior oblique overactions, you do the anterior position of the inferior oblique. And also sometimes we do a myectomy where you cut a part of the muscle and release it. And of course, this is a different procedure. I don't want to confuse you with this. This is a basic inferior oblique procedure. The most important thing is to properly hook the inferior oblique muscle. So you can see here this pink strand, that is the inferior oblique muscle. It's normally a thick muscle, but you should be very, very careful while hooking the muscle, because many a times you may hook only a part of the muscle. And also it's important to note the vortex veins there. You should not damage the vortex vein while hooking the muscle. So it's very, very important to visualize it fully. That's why I said strabismus surgery should be done only under the microscope and with a good magnification. So you gently hook the muscle there, and you should be sure that you are hooking the full muscle. And then you put another hook to free the muscle, because you are doing a myectomy. I am doing a myectomy procedure here where I am excising a part of the inferior oblique muscle. Many people don't do myectomy procedure because recession is a more physiological procedure than a myectomy procedure, because this is an irreversible procedure. But however, it gives very good result in very severe inferior oblique overactions. So I'm putting 2 clamps on either ends, and then this central part of the muscle I'm going to cut it. So this is a myectomy. Inferior oblique is a very vascular muscle. It bleeds a lot, so you should be careful and cauterize the ends of the muscle before you release it from the clamp. So this is a muscle I'm excising so that it doesn't get reattached. So next is the recession. Recession is similar to the same thing. Hooking, everything is the same, but only thing is, instead of cutting and leaving it like that, we are cutting and suturing the muscle near the inferior rectus. So you can see here, same way I'm disinserting the muscle. I would prefer to disinsert the muscle first and then take the sutures, because the insertion of the inferior oblique is very close to the macula, and you don't want to end up perforating the globe there. So that's why it's always better to disinsert the muscle. And now I have hooked the inferior rectus muscle. This is the inferior rectus muscle. So I will be putting this muscle about 4 millimeters posterior to the insertion of the inferior rectus and 2 millimeters lateral to it. So thereby we are reducing the action of the inferior oblique muscle. So you can even grade the recession depending on how much of weakening you want. And depending on that, there are so many points where you can insert the inferior oblique. So this is the recession procedure. So you're putting the muscle there. So in myectomy, you have cut the muscle and you left it there. It just goes and attaches wherever you want. You don't have a control over where it gets attached. Whereas in inferior recession, inferior oblique recession, you are more controlled. You know where exactly you are putting the muscle. And the last inferior oblique procedure is the anterior positioning. This is very similar to the recession procedure, but only the point of where you put the muscle is different. So here you put the muscle just adjacent to the insertion of the inferior rectus muscle. So you can see this is the inferior rectus muscle, and just adjacent to the inferior rectus, I am suturing the inferior oblique. So this gives a better effect to control the inferior oblique overaction, particularly in elevation. So this is the inferior oblique anterior position. So strabismus surgery, there are multiple factors which influence the result. Most important, I would say, is the preoperative assessment. That's why I said preoperative assessment is extremely important in strabismus surgery. It's, I would say, more than 50% of the strabismus surgery. So if somebody says which muscle to do, how much to do, it will be easy, very easy for me to do the strabismus surgery. And the most important is the experience of the surgeon to decide how much and which muscle to do. So strabismus surgery is technically not difficult, and most of the anterior segment surgeons will be able to do strabismus surgery. Good preoperative assessment and proper planning, which muscle to do, how much to do, is most important. Always do your strabismus surgeries under the microscope, because that gives a magnification and gives a good depth of field also. Taking the scleral bite is the most critical step in strabismus surgery. And as in any surgery, don't try to promise that, okay, I will correct your strabismus 100% and end up with problems. So always under correct, under promise, and over deliver. Then that should always be the mantra for any strabismus or any surgery for that matter, not only strabismus. Thank you. So any comments from my panelists, Dr. Deepti, Dr. Soumya, Dr. Kavita?
Maybe based on the way I have learned, I just want to add one point to your conclusion slide. Yeah. I used to write down the steps, every case that I did for at least 2 to 3 years, because I don't know how exactly the results would come up. So how many millimeter I have done in that particular case, and what is the follow-up? I would rather maintain a book.
Very good. That logbook is very...
Yes, because see, I have not seen teachers doing and their results. So, to blindly copy. So I used to, if I do 6, whatever I used to calculate, 6 millimeter recession if I have done, how was my correction immediate post-op, and at 1 month and after 6 months, whoever came for follow-up, I used to have that in my book. This has helped me actually. How did it help me, Antandre? I corrected in the initial stages itself. So now I have a fairly decent result. So that has really helped me.
I think that's very, very valid point, because each strabismus surge and the results vary from person to person. So it all depends on what technique you follow, how you suture the muscle, where you suture the muscle. So there are a lot of variables here. So the nomogram is only a rough guideline, and you should always devise your own nomogram, as Dr. Kavita has very nicely highlighted. Dr. Deepti? Yeah.
Sir, I would make one point with respect to Soumya ma'am's talk. There is with respect to IXTs, it's basically we talk about the age of the surgery. Why is it important? Because majority of the times the children are not really cooperative for our patch test as well as +3 test to assess the AC/A ratio. So I have burnt my hands few in the very beginning. I was over enthusiastic that the frequency of the XTs is large and the parents are appreciating XT majority of time, and the child is squinting in my OPD lot of time, and it was a 3-year-old child. I unfortunately did not do a AC/A ratio assessment, and I did a correction, and the child went in for an ET for a year. In the current era, when everybody just wants to take a selfie, in every selfie the child was turning out to be an ET, and the parents were very unhappy with me, even though it was corrected with the bifocal glasses, and I told them this will be overcome in few years. But I think initially they were unhappy with me. Now they are doing good. They are still with me. But I think these are few points that IXTs doesn't result in amblyopia as much as a case of esotropia. And it's more than the thing that exactly at this age you should perform the surgery. It is basically if the child is cooperative for all the tests, so that you measure the amount of deviation and for the distance as well as near. And if you are able to assess stereo acuity in a child, I think that should be the age when you actually do a surgery with respect to IXTs. And the other point about Sampriti sir videos were awesome, sir. Definitely, it was one of the best videos, especially with respect to IOS. Definitely well, and a very nice panel discussion with everybody. Thank you, sir, for giving this opportunity.
Thank you. Dr. Soumya, your final comments for people who want to start the strabismus practice, general ophthalmologists and postgraduates.
Yes, sir. Firstly, excellent video and excellent talk, sir. Yeah, whenever you want to start a strabismus practice, my take home would be that it's like a jigsaw puzzle. Unless all the puzzles fits into and you make a proper diagnosis, and that leads on to a surgical option, you don't jump ahead and do surgery. The points would be like, whenever you're doing an IXT or an ET, your cycloplegic refraction, your vision, your stereopsis, everything has to be complete. All the jigsaw puzzle has to fit into each other, leading on to a diagnosis. With the IXT, it's not like, oh, okay, ET, I would operate less than 6 months, I get an excellent stereopsis, or IXT, I wait for 4 years. That's exactly why I put up the JAPO study also. It depends on a lot of factors, and each of it contribute individually apart from the general health of the child. You're dealing with a child which may be having a developmental delay, which may be having a CP, which may be having other neurological issues, which also play an important role in your consideration before planning on to surgery. With respect to surgical nomograms, I think I agree with Dr. Kavita ma'am that customization of your own surgical nomograms happens with time, and that has to be a rule. But to begin with, always follow your teacher or your mentor. Stick on to those rules. Don't experiment in the beginning. You do the same measurements for a consistent period of time before you go in and do surgery. Just because the surgeries are easy, when surgeries are easy, everybody can do it. Don't get into and do surgery unless you're able to follow up the check, unless you're able to treat the amblyopia, unless you know that refractive errors would be corrected with time. So everything comes as a whole. Just because you're doing some part of it and it's easier to do, don't jump in and do it. That is what I would say.
Excellent, Dr. Soumya. So the take-home message for all the people who want to start strabismus practices: strabismus is not difficult. It's definitely simple, and anybody can master strabismus treatment. And it's important also because the childhood blindness is a very important problem now. So all of us should contribute. It's not only the responsibility of a pediatric ophthalmologist. All general ophthalmologists have the responsibility to diagnose amblyopia, because most important thing in strabismus is to know, as Dr. Soumya said, when not to operate. So strabismus does not mean surgery. That's a fear actually in the parents also. Moment they have a strabismus, you go to the doctor, they will tell you have to operate. So operation is the last part. Operation is the last part, and you don't have to really worry about the surgery. The first most important thing in strabismus is to diagnose amblyopia. So the two important things we have to highlight here is, first is diagnose amblyopia, second is improve the binocular vision. So these two are the basics of strabismus treatment. So any general ophthalmologist can definitely master strabismus, provided he puts in little effort to learn. Any art will take some time to learn. And the moment you start learning, you will definitely enjoy. And treating children, I will tell you, is the most rewarding and the most happiest part of our profession. And not only that, you will get more cataract surgeries because all their grandparents will come to you for surgeries. So your cataract surgery will also increase if you do a good strabismus practice.